On the last episode, I failed to defeat Zazan, but this time around, I am back with vengeance. So, unfortunately, I did lose the footage, but I killed a couple of the creatures that were in the Quillbore area right outside of Razor Hill, which awarded me with I believe it's called a Cho-Cho, I don't really know, a veteran ally. So it's basically a companion. So now that I have him fighting alongside me and my brand new war axe, I tried again to defeat Zazan, and this time I was much more successful. Now again, you're going to see the tan skin of the trolls. Don't worry, I think by like the next episode you should see them being blue and green orcs and stuff like that, because I figured out what the issue was. I mentioned in the last video that it was because the mod has to be at the bottom of the mods list, and I still had not figured that out at this point in time. But anyway, after a few minutes of taking out Zalazan's minions and defeating him, I loot his body to find that he actually has hardened steel weapons on him. And that's like the best weapon I could have at the moment, because right now I just have iron. So this is basically skipping a tier and going to hardened steel, which is the second best, greatest weapon in the game, as well as the quest item that he dropped that I can now turn in for some cool rewards. In the nearby chests, and as well as the bodies of those I had felled, I found tons of amazing items, from treasure to even weapons that are greater quality than normal. It was getting to the point that I am now running out of room to carry everything that I am finding, which was an issue in the last episode as well. I have a couple of chests down in Razor Hill to hold me over for now, but I think it is time to finally craft my first base. Now the plan is that I am going to craft a little roleplay base for just myself. It's going to be like a hut or two, maybe make it into a farm, something to be more roleplay friendly, but also utility wise. But I also want to create a second base that is going to be primarily for purges. So it's going to have the purpose of facing enemies that want to raid me instead of the opposite way. Now that's going to be later on, and I do want to build in the Barrens, as the last time I played this series, I made my home in Orgrimmar, which is where I'm headed right now on the Zeppelin. But even though Orgrimmar is a very safe area, it is very out of the way comparatively to the rest of the map. I had to travel fair distance to even get to a Zeppelin or anything else in order to fast travel naturally without the use of cheat codes. So this time I want to build in the Barrens, that way I am halfway across the map to everything relatively nearby. But first, I do want to go to Orgrimmar. Not only do I want to see if it's changed at all, but also I remember that that's where you could get a mount. Primarily a horse, as I think there are wolf mounts in this game, but I have not found them yet. Either way, a horse will make traveling across the map much faster, as this is an extremely large map. I think larger than the Exiled lands if I had to take a gamble. I stopped at the local pig farm just outside of the Zeppelin Tower, and I got myself some bacon before I continued on to the main gate of Orgrimmar. And I love it actually has a gate that rises as you approach. It makes it feel more realistic in a sense. As I approach the gate and it lifts to welcome me into my city, I take a look around. It generally looks the exact same as when I last played, though there are some differences, being there are tons of merchants and tons of collectible items that you could just pick up off the ground. You'll see here I go into this home that's got a troll banner and a elf banner. Now there are Zandalari trolls as well as the normal jungle trolls, as you saw me kill at the beginning of this episode, but the Zandalari trolls will wear Zandalari-ish styled armor with the dinosaur bones and the like. And then on the inside of this building here, you do see just normal trolls as well as all the collectible items that I am picking up, kind of like in Skyrim. And I just love this neat little thing that you could do in this map. Not many maps have this available to them. So picking up Jebel Sagfeast as well as a weapon damage kit is really cool. I went to the bank, and inside are merchants. Not quite banks, because there are no banks in Conan, and there is no need for one because you just put everything into a storage chest, but they have merchants there. And there are also merchants within the auction house town as well. Though after I looked around the main area, I went to Thrall. I wanted to see how he looked. Now, unfortunately, he is tan because I still have not yet fixed the mod as of right now, but I did notice something odd. There are 2 Thralls. One of them is registered as a boss for those who are not in the Horde to take on as a boss battle out in the world, but also the other one is registered as a quest giver. So I ran up to the quest giver to see what he had to offer. He basically does what he does in the actual game and sends you into the Ragefire Chasm to bring back the demonic rune for some rewards, being gold. Now I need gold in order to purchase all of the stuff from the many merchants around, so that's going to come in handy, but not quite yet, as dungeons are very endgame in Conan Exiles. So until then, I went to the hunter-trainer area where the horses were still there. So I asked around to see how much a horse would cost, a bit out of my price range. So after looking and staring after a few seconds, I hopped the fence with Chocho and I stole myself a horse. Luckily, the guards do not come after you if you choose to do that. But that still doesn't solve the problem of me needing a home, including a stable in order to raise this horse to be usable. So I headed back to Razor Hill and I crossed the bridge into the Barrens. Now I do stop to gawk at a couple of sightseeing areas, including the watchtower just on the other side of the bridge, but after that I pretty much hightail my way to the crossroads, where I'm going to start looking around to see where I wish to build my first settlement. Once I finally arrived at the crossroads, I explored around to find many types of merchants, as well as different types of thralls that I could tame to help with the crafting, as there's more than just fighters and archers. There are all different types of crafting thralls as well, and that will be beneficial since I will be living nearby, so now I have a source if I needed to tame any more followers for me to use. But I looked around the inside of the inn to see if there were any quests available. So far there are not, and from where I am in the future of my playthrough, there are really no other quests in the Barrens area, with the exception of one turn-in quest in Ratchet, but you technically start that in Razor Hill. In the nearby crafting area of the crossroads, I found several of the stations which are usable. Not all of them are, as some of them are cosmetic only, but a few of them, like the furnace, are usable, and that's going to play an important role pretty soon here, as I need somewhere to actually start making myself some building materials to start creating my hut, and you'll see why pretty soon. But now it was time to search for an area where I plan to build my house. I wanted it to be in the Barrens and somewhat close to the central of Barrens near the crossroads. But where? So it was time to look around and see if I could find any places that looked just right for where I wanted to build not only my first base, but as well my second base, which is going to be a massive fortress. I eventually found a suitable spot just outside of the crossroads to the east, on the road to Ratchet, but just outside the town, so it's not like I'm near Ratchet. I'm still just outside of the crossroads, but I found a nice little flat area, and it would be perfect for building. But also, because I don't really want to spend a lot of time creating my own unique design, I also wanted to use the pre-made Horde huts that come with this mod. But in order to create them, I needed to make the Horde crafting bench. So I spent a little time trying to figure out where it was in the talent tree system of the mod. Once I figured it out, I went ahead and headed back to the crossroads, where I now utilized their crafting area in order to build these huts. This will take a few hours of grinding up resources such as iron, stone, wood, and the like until I can get enough resources to create these huts. Eventually, I build my little hut, and it's got a second floor. This will be perfect to be my own little room, while downstairs could be all for crafting stations. But with Conan Exiles, you're going to need a lot of crafting stations, as they continuously added more over the years, which I don't really know why, but they did. There was a nice little awning outside, and that's going to be perfect for a little outdoor smithing area, so it's all going to work together. But I wanted to add a second room, so I built the smaller hut, the one that is not as roomy as the initial one, and I attached the door to the back door of the first hut, so now it was acting as a second room. That was going to be my primary crafting room, while the main room is going to be more like a kitchen area, more for roleplay. So perfect, just how I like it. After that, I went ahead and started building all of the various tables that I mentioned before. I'm not going to be able to build all of them right off the bat, but at least I can get most of them set and done. I do finally put some chests down. Now, what you're not going to see is when I go back to Razor Hill to get all the stuff I had collected in the first episode to bring back here. But I also have a ton of stuff that I have collected in the Barrens so far during my trips back and forth while farming supplies. So it fills up the chest relatively quickly, but I eventually sort some out into the various crafting benches, and we still need to make more chests, but that will come to a time later on. For right now, I really need to start farming up materials, which means I need more iron. Now, we found some in the starting area, which definitely gave me a boost. But luckily enough, where I decided to build, there is a mine nearby. Now, I remember running this during the Season 1 episodes, and there is a ton of iron and coal. There was also obsidian in that mine, however, it is no longer there, but that's okay. I only need iron for right now. So, I get Chocho, and we head off to the mines. Inside of the mine are Dogs of the Desert, which is an enemy faction of the Exiled lands. So not quite World of Warcraft, but it's fine because they drop a lot of good stuff for my level, including treasure, which I do want to accumulate over time by killing many enemies, as that leads into a separate system called the Purge, which I'll tell you more about that later on. But for now, I have to defeat all of these enemies, which there are a lot of. As I kill the first two, they call for aid, which leads to me fighting a whole bunch of them at once, including a named enemy, which means they are considered a mini boss. But they go down relatively quickly, and they drop some armor for me to use, including their awesome, hyena armor and the skull helmet and such. But once they are all down, I go ahead with Chocho and I start mining up as much iron and coal as I can. And yes, this is the part where I did check to see if there was any obsidian, and I did not see any, but that is okay as I do not need it as of right now. That will come later on. After heading home and taking a couple of beautiful screenshots of my home during the sunset, I went ahead and started putting everything into the various crafting stations and got to work on building, from leather to hide, smelting the iron and making bricks, to shaped wood in order to build more items. It was all coming along nicely, and then after a while I was able to start building the various animal pens and the stables. So now I'll be able to finally raise my horse, so it'll be much easier to go places, especially because I do want to head back to Durotar and finish my progression there. I took a break while my horse was taming up to go kill a nearby orc and blood elf in a tower near my base. Sometimes crafters will spawn here, which is where I will have another source of tames if I needed more allies, which eventually I do come back to tame them, but for now I was just bored and wanted to kill them. But it didn't end up that well here, as I kept lagging out and they were a little bit stronger than I anticipated. Once my horse tamed up, I went out and took him for a little joyride, because they level up really just by riding them around, as well as kills that you do on them. So I rode him around for a little while to get him a couple of levels, so his stamina wasn't too terrible, but eventually I would ride him back to Durotar with Chocho, so we can continue our progression through the zone. Now, since I already defeated a lot of the various areas in Durotar during my initial progression, I marked out on the map where else I had to go. One of them was the Centaur area nearby Senjin. Now, there are no centaurs that are in Conan Exiles, so instead there are wild dogs, as well as Dafari cannibals. These guys are very easy to take on because they are low leveled. However, if you are a new player, I do not recommend taking them on just yet. I would wait until you have at least bone or iron tiered weapons, which my armor is roughly the iron tier, with my weapons being the hardened steel. So I was overpowered for this area, but it's fine because I wanted to clear it out anyway and get a full completionist on this map. The items they drop are going to be low quality. As I said before, they are easy enemies to defeat, and they only drop really the bone tiered items and stuff relevant to it, with very little iron, which I'm already way past. After that, I head back to the Echo Islands. Now I have a taming wheel that Chocho was holding for me. I also had an iron club as well as some binding rope. I was going to attempt to tame Zalazane. Now, of course, I'm going to be editing it out all here because it took me actually several attempts to get him down. He was very hard still, even after my progression, and of course, all of his followers kept jumping me. So I had to try to kill them first before I had a shot at him. I had a bedroll down where I could just, respawn right back up and get back to fighting him, but eventually I did knock him out and tame him. He is a cook, which is kind of weird. I would assume he would be an alchemist, but either way, he will help out on my base now. Now, unfortunately, when you do tame a thrall, they don't get to keep the amazing armor that they have on them at the time. So I had to make up a quick little set for Zalazane to wear until I could find something more suitable. But this lazy son of a bitch, instead of cooking or making stuff, he decides to sleep in my own bed. What a jerk. Anyway, I ended up making a barrack later on for him as well as some other followers that I will tame later on in this series, and I put beds in there for them to use as well as locking off my bed so they can no longer use it. So that problem will be fixed really quick. Anyway, I headed back to Durotar on my trusty horse, which I still have not named, and I don't think I ever will name it because it's just a horse. I would rather have a wolf. And I headed to Thunder Ridge, where they have thunder lizards. Now, the thunder lizards are the imported skin from World of Warcraft, but they are put over a small dragon model, the small dragons from Conan Exiles rather. So all of the animations and attack styles will be of the small dragon, but with the look and feel of the Thunder Lizard. Now, there wasn't much in the crag to begin with, just these Thunder Lizards, so I killed a couple of them, and then I continued on, where I found some orcs and a troll that they were crafting thralls, so I decided to tame them with my follower Chocho, tanking them as I took out their torpor with my iron truncheon. Now, one of them I ended up killing as I didn't really need it to begin with, but also it was going to help limit the amount of damage coming to me, but eventually I did take on the blacksmith and the smelter, and both of them shall be followers of mine in my base. Now, after that, there wasn't really much left to do in Durotar. The only real thing left to do is Skull Rock, but Skull Rock is a dungeon, which I said earlier that dungeons are endgame content, so I wasn't sure if I would be able to do it or not at this level with such little armor and weapon type. Now, eventually I will return to finish all of the dungeons, but for now, as I progress through the zones, I am skipping all dungeons, and once I have better gear, stronger weapons, and more allies to fight beside me, then I will return and complete all of them. This is also going to include larger alliance zones. Smaller camps I will take on, but the towns I will wait until I am stronger before I take them on. So I am not going to do the Coltiris Tiragard Keep area, and I'm not going to do Skull Rock for right now. But for now, I'm going to say that Durotar was an absolute success, and I have finished progression of it. After fighting some spiders in the ravine south of Orgrimmar, I headed back home finally, where I settled in my new blacksmith and smelter. Now, as I said before with Zalazane, they don't come with the armor that you tame them with, so I had to make them some armor using my blacksmith bench and my armor's workbench with now all of the leather and iron that I had accumulated over the last few hours of playing. I was able to make them at least some basic armor and clothing to wear for right now instead of the rags that they start off with. I was also able to start making myself some better weapons and tools to continue my progression. So I am now pretty much fully into the iron tier, but the next thing I need is to find a good source of brimstone, which even right now in my playthrough, way beyond what you're seeing right here, it's still very hard to find. I have only found one source of brimstone, and it doesn't even have a lot of this, so steel is going to be very hard to come by, but that's okay because I find other methods of progressing my character. But for now, let's dress up the characters. I also give them names, and I set them up in the base. Now, I also went to the nearby oasis where I collected aloe. Aloe is actually very important for Conan Exiles, as that is how you make most of your healing items, from potions to bandages, and even aloe soup, which is one of the better healing items in the game. So after that, I headed back, and this is where I proceeded to make the barracks, which which I used a troll hut for instead of the orcish huts that I had been using. It's a bit smaller, but it will fit plenty of beds to house many characters in them. Pretty much as I finished setting it up, they all went to take a well-deserved break. At least some of them. Zalazane is a bit of a slacker, but anyway, that is going to be the end of episode 2. I hope you enjoyed this playthrough of Kalimdor Exiles. The next episode will show me taking on the Barrens and all the various areas that it has to offer. There are way more than Durotar, and actually I will be here quite a while before I progress to the next one. So until then, I will see you next time.